It's December 2022 and I'm continuing my exploration of New York by taking a series of journeys from Manhattan to the islands of New York Harbour. In an almost perfect geographic location, at the head of a massive sheltered bay, New York has grown to become an economic powerhouse and an icon of America. The largest of the three main islands in New York Harbour, south of Manhattan, Governor's Island sits around 800 metres off the southern tip of Manhattan and about 400 metres west of Brooklyn. The native Lipane originally referred to Governor's Island as Nut Island due to the area's rich collection of chestnut, hickory and oak trees. It's believed the island was originally used for seasonal foraging and hunting. By the late 18th century, the island was being referred to as Governor's Island, around the same time as it started to be used as a military installation, with the first fortifications appearing in 1776. From 1786 to 1996, the island was a United States Army post, and during this time the two main fortifications on the island, Fort Jay and Castle Williams, were built. In the latter period of its use by the Army, it served as a major United States Coast Guard installation. Following decommissioning as a military base, it was sold for public for a nominal sum in 2003, and then opened for public use in 2005. The area around the two fortifications is administered and run by the National Park Service, with the rest of the island being run by the Trust of Governor's Island, with 150 acres and 52 historic buildings being used as a public park. Until 2021, the island was only open during the summer months, but in a response to COVID, the island is now accessible all year round. From the western side of the island, there are excellent views across the waters to the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. Over the years, the island space has been redeveloped with more parkland and walking trails established, as well as artworks being placed around the island, either as temporary exhibits or as permanent additions to the island. One of the largest buildings on the island is the Liggett Hall, a former barracks building built in 1929, replacing temporary wooden barracks and an old warehouse that had been on the site since the First World War. Whilst the need for the barracks was never in question, the intention behind the alignment of the building has been. In the 1920s, the island was under consideration for a small 2,000-foot-long downtown airport or airstrip. But with Liggett Hall, as laid out, stretching for almost half the width of the island, any plans for building a runway were thwarted. Occupying the northwestern corner of the island and providing cover for almost the whole of the harbour, Castle Williams was built in the 19th century to protect the city from naval attack. Across the harbour is perhaps the most famous of the islands, and possibly the most famous statue in the world, Liberty Island and the Statue of Liberty, or Liberty Enlightening the World to give it its full name. Whilst every tour boat in New York sails past the island, only one company's boats, with a permit from the National Park Service who run both Liberty and Ellis Islands, can actually land and take passengers ashore, meaning it's important to book well in advance, as tickets for various sections of the island sell out fast. You can buy a ticket that just lets you land on the island so that you can wander around and visit the museum. These have the highest availability. Each day there's several thousand tickets that also allow you to land on the island and then climb inside the pedestal of the statue, going right to the feet of Liberty and offering some of the best views of the statue and New York. There's also a couple of hundred tickets each day that let you climb up the spiral staircase inside the statue to the crown at the top. some 400 cramped winding steps up and the same number back down again. A viewing platform of the Crown lets you see what Lady Liberty sees. I'd opted for the pedestal ticket, as I didn't fancy the slog up to the Crown and could get the best views from here. It's a well-known fact that the statue was a gift to the people of the United States from France, with the statue being designed and constructed by Colmar-born artist Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi, and its internal metal framework was built by Gustave Eiffel. What isn't so well known is that the statue was given free on condition that the US built a suitable plinth for the statue to be positioned on. And that caused a few issues, as 2 years after a fundraising campaign to pay for the plinth started, the committee still only had $3,000 in the bank and suspended work on the building. Joseph Pulitzer, publisher of the New York World, announced a drive to raise $100,000, about $2.3 million in today's money, by pledging to print the names of every contributor, no matter how small the amount given. And with that, the donations started to flood in. On June the 17th, 1885, the French steamer Isere arrived in New York with the crates, holding the disassembled statue on board, which is slightly unfortunate as the pedestal wasn't completed until April 1886 due to the delays of the fundraising. A dedication ceremony took place on the afternoon of October the 28th, 1886, following a parade early in the day in New York City. As the statue was made from copper, it started as a dull brown colour, but by 1900 the process of oxidisation of the copper skin had started, with the third-degree patina starting to form. Just 6 years later, the statue had turned fully green to the colour recognised today. Alongside Lady Liberty on her island is a small museum that tells the history of the project, from initial idea through construction and completion to ongoing restoration and repairs. The original lamp from the top of the statue was removed in 1984, as it was found to be a major source of leaks into the structure that were corroding the insides of the statue, is on display, along with a life-size recreation of the face, so you can see quite how enormous the structure is. A short ferry ride from Liberty Island and you reach Ellis Island. If Lady Liberty was the first glimpse of their new life in the New World that immigrants from Europe would see as they arrived in New York, Ellis Island was their first reality check. Whilst first and second class passengers on the transatlantic steamers were dealt with by immigration officers on board the ship whilst it sailed into New York, steerage passengers had to disembark and board a boat that would shuttle them across to Ellis Island for processing. Although only open as a processing centre for just over 30 years, from 1892 to 1924, the site still processed nearly 12 million immigrants arriving into the city. During that time, more than 98% of the people who arrived were granted entry to the country, with most spending less than 5 hours to complete the process. From 1924 to 1954, the island became a detention centre for migrants, and following World War II was used to detain prisoners of war. After its closure in 1954, the buildings were left to decay until the island was saved and partially reopened in 1976. Renovation works then started, which lasted until 1990, when the immigration buildings were finally fully restored to how they would have been during the centre's heyday. New York is one of only a handful of truly global cities on the planet, linked to every continent by pretty much every international airline across its three main airports of John F. Kennedy International, Newark Liberty International and LaGuardia, with several other smaller regional airports providing vital connections as well. If you'd like a slightly more relaxed way to arrive into New York, Cunard still sail the only ocean liner in the world, the Queen Mary 2, from Southampton to New York, taking 7 nights eastbound and 7 or 8 nights westbound, around 8 times a year.